Very good morning to you. On the fifth connection, you are joining us here on fifthfactor.co.za. Very, very welcome. There are many highlights in my day, many highlights in my week. This is certainly one of the highlights of my day, and thank you for taking the time to join us on what we hope would become a highlight for you as well. My name is Theophilus van Rensburg-Linster, and I'm joined by Terry Martin on these precious moments every single weekday, Monday through to Friday at 7 a.m. on this day, the 25th of September. It is a Wednesday. Mittwoch is how you say it in German. How do we say it in Cape Town, Terry?
Midweek, I guess.
Midweek.
Middle of the week.
Midweek, I guess. I believe in equal rights.
Yep.
Your guess is as good as mine. Thank you, as usual, Terry, for the hard mental, spiritual, and intellectual spade work you apply to an understanding of the scriptures and for bringing it to us with clarity, with a commitment to challenge our mind, not answering all our questions, and I've appreciated that. I'm sure those of you who have listened in every single morning have appreciated and learned and enjoyed from how we navigate through what is called now Jerry's Journal from the book of Jeremiah. We are in chapter 39 from verse 1 through to 18. So in the next 60 seconds or so, while Terry's getting ready, could you make your way out over there? Jeremiah 39 from verse 1 through to 18. Terry?
The line of a very familiar poem by James Lowell says the following: behind the dim unknown stands God within the shadow. Behind the dim unknown stands God within the shadow. And that's really the main idea that is running through these 18 verses, because this morning we're going to spend just a short time looking at a very hard pill to swallow, a tough topic, a tough subject to talk through. Because the question in these verses, in these lines of the story, has to do with pain, abysmal pain. And here's the question: what moderates the depths of abysmal pain? What moderates the depths of abysmal pain, as in the abyss? Pain is so deep, I can't even express what I'm going through. I dive into the abyss and I just keep diving, and the pain goes deeper and deeper and deeper. Such was the disorder that Jerusalem, the city and its citizens, would face as King Nebuchadnezzar sweeps through and razes the city to the ground. Because 41 years into the preaching of this prophet comes this particular list of how deeply Israel would suffer. And we're going to look at just a few ideas here.
If I could just interject,
it's a
there.
subject that is.
Sorry, Terry.
Yes.
If I could just interject there. I'm having some difficulties. I'm trying to listen in on the live broadcast, and I can't hear us, and I'm not so sure why. It is streaming.
No sound coming through.
No, it doesn't seem like that, unless I am wrong. Yeah. I wonder if we could check in with Jackie quickly. Could you do that quickly? I'm just going to stop the stream right away.
and what that disorder looks like. Remember the fractal idea that runs through the scriptures from Genesis to Revelation. It's life, it's death and resurrection. It is order, chaos, and reorder. And that is the pattern for transformation. And right here in the biblical text, you're going to see that movement from verse 1 to verse 10, the disorder that descends upon the nation. And then in verse 11 to 18, watch how life is reordered and what that looks like and why it looks the way it does. So the text is very clear that here Jeremiah is facing some very critical situations in in his life. Theo, I think the message that came through, it's only the music that's running. And
Yeah, that is
yeah.
actually what I suspect. So let's just do a reset here. And I think, let me just do the following. Let's try this again. Okay, that's there.
That crucial line from James Lowell's poem, Present Crisis, says the following: behind the dim unknown stands God within the shadow. Behind the dim unknown stands God within the shadow. Because when life crashes, when the lights go out in our lives, how do we know He's there? And so the question on the table in these 18 verses is, what moderates the depths of abysmal pain? What moderates the depths of abysmal pain? Pain is so deep, feels like we've tottered and tumbled into an abyss because there's been betrayal, there's been injustice, and we have tumbled uncontrollably into territory that is ravaging our lives, because that's what pain does. Pain ravages our lives. What moderates the depths of that abysmal pain? Well, you're going to see the same pattern that exists from Genesis to Revelation unfolding here in chapter 39. The pattern is order, chaos, reorder. Life, death, resurrection. That's what we commonly call the resurrection cycle. In this resurrection chamber, as it were. And because life springs out of death, or did you not know, except a grain of wheat fall into the ground and die, it abides alone. But if it abides alone, it will burst forth with life and energy and productivity. So you see the people of God here in chapter 39, their lives are ravaged in verse 1 to verse 10. Because you see, rebellion is the doorway to destruction. Rebellion against God is the doorway to the devastation of a human life or human lives. And the Old Testament concept is very clear in the book of Numbers, that whenever there's a clenched fist raised into the face of God, as it were, Bayad Ramah is the terminology that is used in the ancient text. The clenched fist will be unforgiven, and the judgment of God will roll. And you see that in 2 Kings 25, because the nation is decimated because of our constant rebellion. Not just a once-off situation, constant. across the gracious years that God gives the nation, a clenched fist is raised toward heaven. Because you see, rebellion carries its clients to an unspeakable end. In verse 1 to verse 7, you see that. What is the unspeakable end? Well, Nebuchadnezzar in verse 1, king of Babylon, and his armies come against Jerusalem and they besiege the city. And all the princes are involved. Nergal-sharezer, Shamgar-Nebo, Sarsheshkim, Rabsaris, Nergal-sharezer, Rabmag, and the rest of the princes of the king of Babylon. That list there is, of course, not the list from which you want to choose any names for your kids nor your grandkids. But these kings, these princes of the king of Babylon, because Babylon is the king of the north that comes against the nation. And of course, they take Zedekiah, the king of Judah, they take him prisoner. And the Chaldean army in verse 5 pursued them and overtook Zedekiah in the plains of Jericho. And watch what they do when they catch him. They bring him to Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, in verse number 5. And in verse number 6, they kill his sons before his eyes. What a devastating thing to do. The enemy kills his sons before his eyes. Not only that, once his sons are killed, they put Zedekiah's eyes out. They remove his eyes and bind him in bronze fetters and carry him off to Babylon. What a devastating picture of destruction because of constant rebellion. Bayad Ramah is unforgivable. The clenched fist raised in rebellion against God carries its clients to an unspeakable end. But not only that, in verse 8, it crushes the safe spaces that Judah had. Verse 8, the Chaldeans burned the king's house and the houses of the people with fire and broke down the walls of Jerusalem. The safe place, the sacred space is destroyed. There's no place to hide because that's what happens when there is constant rebellion. God will deal with a man, woman, or child. He will deal with a nation. He will deal with a civilization that constantly tries to kick out the slats of order from that culture. God is dispelled from the culture. Chaos is the result. And then in verse 9 and 10, some are taken and some are left because that's what the results of rebellion cause. Some are taken to captivity and some are left destitute back in the city. Verse 9 says, then Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, carried away captive to Babylon the remnant of the people who remained in the city, and those who defected to him with the rest of the people who remained. But Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, left in the land of Judah the poor who had nothing and gave them vineyards and fields at the same time. So, an almost total destitution of the people and the city because of rebellion. But now you notice how the text turns and shows you that in the midst of disorder, there are those who would be a picture of what a reordered life and living looks like. And it comes up in verse 11 to 18 because reliance is the pathway to protection. Reliance on God is the pathway to protection from devastation. You can trust God in the eye of the storm. In the midst of the catastrophes of life, He can be trusted. When life comes unglued at the seams, He is there. And to understand that truly tears are a language only God understands. And God can interpret those tears because He knows our hearts. It says in verse 11, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, gave charge concerning Jeremiah to Nebuzaradan, the king of the God, saying, take him and look after him and do him no harm, but do to him just as he says to you. Now, if that's not God's protection in the midst of devastation, then I don't know what is. Look after him, do him no harm, but do to him just as he says. That's God's protection. In the midst of disorder, he can reorder our private world. Many years ago, Gordon MacDonald wrote a book entitled Ordering Your Private World. And God can reorder life when there's devastation. And he had a major crisis in his own life and experienced something of the gracious hand of God. This is Gordon. Now back to the text. Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, sent Nebuchadnezzar, Rabsaris, Nergal-Sharezer, Rabmag, and all the king of Babylon's chief officers. A Rabmag was something of a soothsayer. Rabsaris was probably a chief of the eunuchs in the courts of the Babylonian king. And then they sent someone to take Jeremiah from the court to the prison and committed him to Gedaliah, the son of Ahikam, the son of Shaphan. And there he would dwell. So Jeremiah experiences God's protection, but so does another very significant individual that you never hear a sermon about. His name is Ebed Melech, son of the king, slave or servant of the king. Ebed Melech. The word is, go and speak to Ebed Melech, the Ethiopian, saying, the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, I will bring my words upon the city for adversity and not for good, and they shall be performed in that day before you. But I will deliver you. Ebed Melech, I will deliver you. You shall not be given into the hand of the men of whom you are afraid, for I will deliver you. You shall not fall by the sword, but your life shall be as a prize for you. Why is this grace shown to Ebed Melech? Shown to Jeremiah. Now it's shown to this Ethiopian. Because you see in chapter 38, he would be the one who represents Jeremiah's case to the authorities and says, what you're doing is wrong. And because of his intervention, he's able to save Jeremiah out of the pit and to rescue him. And as a result, the text says here at the end of verse 18, because you have put your trust in me. Men and women, God can be trusted in the midst of the storms of our life when things fall apart, when things come apart, when they come unglued. God can be trusted. You have put your trust in me. That's why I will preserve you, says the Lord. And so you have these two pictures of how God can bring stability to that which is unstable, and he can restabilize a human life. His grace is shown in the life of Jeremiah and in this Ethiopian, Ebed Melech. And he can do that for you. Are you in the pit of great pain? Are you experiencing the pangs of what life has thrown you? As you would say, it's thrown you a curved ball, right? And your life is devastated through a loss of a job, loss of a loved one, a loss of something that you prize highly in your life, maybe a position or a job, and you are smarting because of the pain. What moderates the depths of that abysmal pain? Well, behind the dim unknown stands God within the shadow. It's something of what Jeremiah understood and Ebed Melech. They stood strong in the midst of the devastation of the covenant culture. the people whom God would use to be the channel for salvation, to be a lamp to the nations, a light to the world. Those are the people that he's now dealing with. And it's time for their demise. But two characters would stand strong on the horizon. Are you willing to take the risk to place your confidence, your trust in God? He is a reliable, stable confidant that you can lean on. Yes, because tears are language God understands. Back to you, Thea.
Terry, it's hard to hear. But deeply encouraging to hear for those of you who've joined us this morning. What a consoling, encouraging, and deeply moving thought. God is there. He stands there. He's behind that dim unknown. He's behind those difficulties. He's in the midst of our deepest pain. What a wonderful encouragement this morning. Very difficult not to feel the jolts in one's soul as we thought through this journey that you took us on this morning. Thank you so much, brother. This particular song that Terry has located here is sung by the Heritage Singers, and we'll play that out for you as we trust that the Lord will give you a meaningful week, a precious set of opportunities to serve Him, to listen to this huge challenge, and to know that you can take God seriously. That you can, as you mentioned, Terry, you can trust Him. Thank you so much, my brother, for this challenge, as hard as it sounded to us. These were important words to hear. We wish you all a wonderful rest. Yeah, thank you, listeners, for joining us in these precious moments. We'll see you back tomorrow morning on Thursday, the 26th of September, 7 a.m. Thank you for your patience, your willingness to walk this journey with us. God be blessed and praised.
turned out the way that you had planned. But God won't forget you.